Welcome to the Doing Life Together podcast. I'm Jonathan.
I'm Kristen.
I'm Owen.
I'm Eli.
And I'm Evan.
Welcome. Excited to have Chrissy back with us today. Today we're going to talk about relationships. So that's the theme of the episode is relationships. We're going to talk about 3 different types of relationships that you need, and how to have those types of relationships in a healthy way. Chrissy brought this to my attention, so I'm pretty excited because she's pretty smart. And so when she has a good idea and shares it with me, I feel pretty honored. Let's move on. So the second need 3B3, so that was teacher, that was the Paul. Next one is the encourager, Barnabus. What does it take to be a good encourager?
I would say a good encourager, I would say they have to be trustworthy, because it's like I don't gain much encouragement if I'm like hearing something from like somebody I know is like a fake person. Like if I can't trust them to like actually be on my side and like telling me the truth, then like encouragement from them would not be worth anything. And then they have to be like kind-hearted, I guess. I don't know. Like they have to be willing to go out and like tell you the good things that you're doing, or like be encouraging, because I know like not everybody is like that and can go and be positive to somebody else and like not just go and put them down. So they have to be willing to go out there and be friendly, I guess.
I want to add to what you said. Have you guys heard the term toxic positivity? I've actually been accused of being toxically positive before, which is weird for me. But it's this idea that, yeah, it is weird, that you only focus on the positive and you overhype the positive. So you just basically everything's awesome all the time. And so no one believes that what's actually awesome is truly awesome. And I disagree that I've ever been toxically positive. And my family clearly disagrees as well.
I wouldn't say that.
Observe that side of you for work, apparently.
I guess, I mean, like,
not that you are overly negative or toxically negative, but you
I keep it real.
Keep it real.
That's what I like to say.
I mean, like the only time I could like think of a time where I've seen that or really heard of it is maybe like sometimes in like sports, say somebody's having a bad game and everybody's just trying to like keep them from like melting down, because they know that if they get in a bad mood, then it'll just impact how they play the rest of the game. Like, so maybe that could be considered like toxically positive, where you're just like being positive even though there's really nothing to be positive about. But yeah, I mean, I don't know.
So is that like the cheerleaders who are still cheering on the football team that's losing 52-0?
That could be. I mean, that's kind of just like, yeah, I'd say almost everybody rolls their eyes at that. And then there are people out there who are just way too positive, and that can be like suffocating, because it's just like, okay, I need you to like keep it real with me. But if you're just sunshine and rainbows all the time, like it doesn't feel that way. So I could see how that would be an issue, but no, I don't think I've noticed it in you.
Oh, geez, thanks. I think I'm not sure.
So I would kind of sum up what Owen said and the opposite of toxic positivity as like being genuine, right? I think that's really important. You have to know that this other person genuinely cares about you, genuinely means what they're saying. Then you're going to listen to that encouragement. So I think that's a key piece of being a good encourager. And I also think just being thoughtful, and I'm not always good at this because I sometimes am forgetful, but like following up with people. So if they share something with you that's really hard that they're going through, a good encourager is going to be the person that follows up within a couple days and says, hey, how's that going? Or how was that appointment that you had that you were really nervous about? Or, that is really important to me in an encourager.
So encouraging in your mind isn't always about bringing the positivity. Sometimes it's just engaging with someone as they go through their real life.
Yes. Yeah. The way I picture, the Paul, Barnabas, Timothy is kind of like, this is your peer. This is someone that you're just doing life with. They're the ones that are motivating you and encouraging you along the way. But they're not necessarily pouring knowledge into you, and you're not pouring knowledge into them. They are kind of in that same stage of life or, step in their faith journey, things like that. They're the person that you're doing this process with.
And I think that's a good perspective, because it's also very much so the biblical perspective. Like, Paul spent a lot of time in jail. Paul spent a lot of time being persecuted. So clearly it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Mm-hmm. So Barnabas was having to encourage him through that. Keep the faith. Mm-hmm. I'm here for you. So that's really good. What else? What does it take to be a good encourager? We got trustworthy, not toxically positive, kind-hearted, genuine, consistent. How about this idea? I think in order to be a good encourager, and it goes along with your doing life, you have to actually know the person, like, well. Like, otherwise you're just kind of a fake encourager. Mm-hmm. Oh, you can do it. And it's like, you don't know them. They really can't. Right? Like, and that's not very encouraging. That's just lying. That's toxic. So in order to be a good encourager, you actually have to be invested in the life of the other person. Mm-hmm. So you're
involved in the day-to-day. You're knowing the person well.
Yeah. That's a good one. What about brave? I wrote brave down as you guys were talking. Like, it is really hard to be vulnerable and kind-hearted and empathetic sometimes, especially to go first. I think being a good encourager takes some courage or bravery.
I have something if needed. I would just say, like, it can especially be hard to be like super encouraging to those people who are like going through things, because I mean, sometimes people who are going through tough things aren't exactly the nicest people or the most positive, and so like it can be really hard to like be willing to just like go out there and be encouraging when you know the response you're going to get back might not be beneficial or helpful or kind. So yeah, that's like another thing is like, obviously people in those situations are the ones who need the most encouragement, but they can also be the hardest to encourage because they're kind of fragile and you don't know how they're going to react to your positivity.
Right. And I think that's where it can cross the line into that toxic positivity. Mm-hmm. But it's important to realize that, like, you can encourage someone and, not necessarily say everything's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. You're encouraging them in their strengths, in their gifts, and how to use those to kind of navigate the situation they're in. So just today, I was talking to someone who was trying to help someone through a potential cancer diagnosis. And this person told the other person, don't freak out, don't worry, they're doing more tests, maybe everything will be okay. And I said, well, that's nice for you to try to get them to not worry, but like, it's inevitable. Like, you have to pretty much face, okay, I know you're freaking out, I know you're worried, and then kind of find a way to support them through it, rather than that false, maybe it's nothing, let's move on, that doesn't work very well.
Yeah. And another hard thing is, like, obviously, like in your example right there, the person knows that things probably won't be okay. But like some things that I've ran into is like people who are like, I don't know. I was talking to one of my friends a week or two ago, and he was like dealing with a situation with a girl. And like, it was clear to me that the girl didn't really like him. And so he should just work on moving on and not put himself through a bunch of pain. But like, it was kind of difficult to be like still caring and encouraging while also being like, maybe you shouldn't waste your time and invest time in someone who doesn't actually care about you. So like it can be hard to like find that balance of like telling them what they need to hear while also like not putting them down or making it even harder for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Being brave enough to say the hard things, like Dad used the word brave, is really important. Even though it might not sound encouraging, it's the way you're helping them through it. Good points.
Good stuff. All right. Now we're going to move on to student. Like, what are the characteristics of a good student in a relationship?
Obviously, a good listener. They actually need to want to learn, because if they're not actually trying to learn, they'll just it'll go in one ear, out the other, and they won't really take anything to heart.
So what makes a good student? How do you make sure you're a good student at school?
Put in actual effort. If you don't understand something, don't like just sit there and whine about not understanding, and actually like ask the teacher for extra help or ask like a brother or something. Just actually go out of your way to make sure you understand it.
That's good.
I would say a good student is focused. They ask questions about it, because there are almost no teachers out there that will like remember to stress every detail or give everything. So or you might just miss something, and that is normal. So it's important to ask questions when you don't understand something or there's something else you want to know about the topic. They are open-minded, so they're not just like sitting there thinking that their way is necessarily the only way, and they're willing to hear out the teacher with what they're saying. They're persistent. They don't just give up if they don't understand it the first time, and they just are willing to keep at it. And then respectful to the teacher and other people that are trying to learn, because otherwise you're just disruptive and nobody ends up learning.
Yeah.
Can you come teach my class? What it looks like to be a good student?
Yeah. Just sit there in third grade class.
Sorry, you were going to say something.
That's all right. I was just going to add, self-awareness is really important for a student. Like a lot of what you guys have said about being respectful or not being a whiner or focus or all that. It's about self-awareness. Like, it's just bringing to those interactions where you're willing to learn, just the reality that your life experiences have biased you in a lot of ways. And you have to be willing to put that stuff aside so that you can learn. And a lot of people don't have that posture of humility as a student. And that's really important.
The word that came to my mind was humility. And to be able to realize you need to learn something, or there is room for growth. Especially outside of a school setting, a lot of people don't have that concept that, yeah, I could learn from someone else still. They think, I graduated from college. I know it all. I'll just go navigate life. And they don't realize their need to learn from someone else. So being willing to humble yourself enough to say, I don't know it all.
I want to revisit the Warren Buffett point, because another one of his was about curiosity and nurturing curiosity, which is all about being a student, essentially, and always being willing to learn. And that's basically how he made a lot of his money, was he got to know these companies that he ended up buying better than just what he could see in a financial statement or a quarterly report or an annual letter to the shareholders. So I think Warren Buffett actually hit all three, so we're going to add that to the list. So he said you should be a mentor, a teacher, and a student. So I like it. All right, so we've covered a lot in these episodes on healthy relationships.
Can I do the recap for us?
All right, Eli, go.
Can you recap the need 3, B3?
So we've talked about need 3, B3. And that's basically you need to be a teacher to someone, be a student of someone, and be an encourager to someone. But you also need to be taught by someone, also be a student of someone. That's kind of overlapping, and be an encourager to somebody. So now I believe we will get into what each of us think is the hardest relationship for us individually.
Nailed it. All right.
I will go first. I really like to learn. I like to teach people, but I'm not a very good encourager. I just find it really hard to be positive a lot of the time because I don't know. I think it may be because I have super high standards for myself. So I also have super high standards for other people. So it's very hard for them to meet those standards. And I don't like to be fake and pretend I'm happy with them if I'm not.
So the concept of maybe being someone's encourager really just means doing life with them and being honest with them, whatever that looks like. Does that make it a little bit easier?
Yeah, I definitely do that better, but I don't know.
All good. All right, Evan, which one of them is hardest for you?
I think the hardest for me is probably being a learner, just because I don't know, something about me. I learn in a very specific way. So like in school, a lot of the teachers don't necessarily meet the way that I learn best. That just makes it difficult to learn a lot of the time.
How would you sum up how you learn best?
I'm very hands-on. I'm not going to learn anything by a teacher sitting at a smart board and going over note sheets and having like me just write down my own notes. I need practice problems and stuff like that to actually be able to grasp it.
There's that self-awareness thing that we talked about to be a good learner. All right, Owen, what's the hardest one for you?
I love learning and teaching. So by default, I'd say the hardest for me is encouraging. And I think for me, most of the time, it's just like the times I find myself not being an encourager is when I just get caught up in my own stuff. And so I'm like, I just start thinking about how something might relate to me. So like, I don't know. It's if somebody comes to me and has a problem and needs me to talk them through it, I'm usually pretty good about being encouraging and stuff like that. But it's just like day to day, I might not be as encouraging as I should because I just like get caught up in my own thoughts and life that I just forget to be encouraging.
What about you? The wonderful Mrs. Kauser.
Sitting here thinking about it, I think the hardest for me is actually being a student or a learner at this stage. Just because, not because I think I know everything, but I'm kind of in this like busy phase where I will just have to figure it out on my own. And I don't necessarily take the time to ask for help or seek out, that teaching. I'm just like, I'll learn as I go and I plow through. So that's maybe in my career setting. But obviously I try to be a learner when it comes to like my faith and, following Jesus and all of that. I'm learning from the word and everything.
Am I the last one? For me, I said the hardest one for me would be to be encouraged. So I just kind of like Eli said, I have really high standards for myself. So when people tell me I'm doing a good job, the high of that lasts for a very short amount of time. And then I'm immediately moving on to, all right, but what's next? So I don't do a good job of celebrating. Plus, I'm a leader. I've been a leader for a really long time in a lot of aspects of life. And so there's this kind of saying out there about, maybe it's a cliche, but leaders are typically lonely because leadership is just a lonely pursuit sometimes. So I'm really bad at being encouraged. Yeah, this was a lot cheaper than counseling, so I'm glad we did that. All right. We're going to go into the wrap up now, because this has been a very, very deep episode. So in this episode, we talked about healthy relationships. We talked about this idea of need 3, be 3. And Eli, I'm going to go to you because you did such a good job last time of summarizing it. Go. Need 3, be 3. What does that stand for?
You need to be a teacher, to get taught by someone, and to have someone encourage you or go through life with you. And then you need to be a teacher to someone, need to be a student of someone, and you also need to encourage or go through life with someone.
That's fantastic. So basically, we use 3 biblical characters to represent that. It was Paul, the teacher, Barnabus, the encourager, and Timothy, the student. We talked about why relationships are important, and we said that Eli brought up shared learning. So when you're in relationships, you're not learning everything for the first time, so you don't have to worry about, I think it was not touching the hot stove, because someone else will be there who has learned from experience not to touch the stove. We talked about not having encouragement would be miserable in your life. So it could lead you to fail or quit more quickly because no one is pushing you past the hard stuff. And then we talked about need 3, be 3. We learned that Warren Buffett did not sing It's 5 O'Clock Somewhere, but that instead he is the Oracle of Omaha, and that he is a billionaire the world over, recognized for his savvy, and that he included in his 12 characteristics to have a great life the same concept of having a mentor, being a teacher, and being encouraged. So we nailed it there. We then talked about how, as a family, if aliens were to come to Earth and say, what does a good family look like? They would be people who communicate well. They have common interests. They have mutual respect for each other. And that includes other people's feelings, their talents, and their time. And they like to have fun together. A good family is willing to address conflict and don't pretend that everything's awesome all the time. They have teamwork and shared responsibilities, even though shared doesn't mean equal. So sometimes people are going to play to their strengths or do more than others. There has to be compromise and patience. And then we talked about the characteristics of a teacher. And we said a good teacher is an engaging and they explain things well. They are a good communicator, which is probably very similar, but they're good at communicating. They're relatable. We talked about how you have to actually know stuff, and how that in today's world, that's not necessarily a given that someone who's going to claim to be a teacher actually knows what they're talking about, because they can use AI and Google just to find information. You have to care about people and want them to learn, and then you have to be vulnerable, honest. Then we talked about the encourager, and to be a good encourager, that's about doing life together, not always about just being a cheerleader. An encourager does not equal toxic positivity where everything is awesome all the time. To be a great encourager, you need to be trustworthy so people can count on you. Avoid toxic positivity. Kind-hearted. Bravery is required because people might reject your encouragement, or sometimes you have to do hard things when someone is going through life. You have to address the hard stuff in their life. You have to be consistent and follow through on what you say you're going to do. And don't be a liar. And then to be a good student, you have to be a good listener. So actively listening. You have to actually want to learn. So if someone doesn't want to learn, don't waste your time trying to invest in them. It's not going to work. Curiosity is important. Open-mindedness was something we mentioned. Good students are respectful. They're willing to put forth hard effort because learning ain't always easy. You have to be willing to ask questions. We don't want to be a whiner. So sometimes being a student is hard and you have to not whine. You just have to keep working, focused. Vulnerability is important. And then some level of self-awareness and humility. As always, these are just what we have experienced in life. We think it's really good advice and worth doing, but evaluate it through the lens of your own life before going out and just doing what we are talking about. We encourage you to find us wherever you get your podcasts. We're also on YouTube. We would really appreciate a like and subscribe or a scribe to the button. And if you want to share this with other people, we'd really appreciate it. Until next time, keep living your best life.